Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. UFC Denver coming up in a few days, and we will be breaking down a flyweight matchup. I think it's the only flyweight fight on the card between Joshua Van and Charles Johnson. Two guys that I kind of know really well. Been interviewing Charles Johnson for pretty much most of his UFC career. And even before his UFC career, I did interview him when he was in LFA, when he was the champion. Joshua Van as well. I interviewed him before his UFC career, and now I'm interviewing him throughout his UFC career. This is a short notice fight. They put this together on short notice. I think they needed more exciting matchups on UFC Denver. And nobody, from what I heard from some of the fighters in Denver that are UFC fighters, that a lot of people don't want to fight in Denver because of the elevation. And so whenever they're offered fights in Denver, they usually turn them down. So it seemed like they had a tough time putting the card together, right? But it's going to happen in a couple of days. We got Joshua Van and Charles Johnson. This is a great matchup. I think this is the best matchup on the card. And it's going to be probably one of the most exciting fights that we'll see. It all depends on, if elevation doesn't play a factor.
Yeah.
What do you think about the elevation thing? Have you fought in elevation, or have you been somewhere high and trained?
I've trained in elevation, but it's never been like Denver elevation. But
Vegas, like how's Vegas? It's just humid, right?
It's actually slightly elevated. So like when you go there, even though you're in a desert bowl, apparently the elevation is a little bit higher. So when you go there, you feel it. There was an adjustment period for sure.
Charles Johnson, I believe he's in Vegas training, and some of the fighters that I've interviewed that were going to be on the Vegas card or on the Denver card, if they're not from Denver, some of them were in Vegas training in the mountains.
Yeah,
in Vegas,
you can
and there's some
do that.
elevation up there, right? So let's jump into the matchup: Josh Van versus Charles Johnson. Both guys highly skilled, in many different aspects. I think their style, you could pretty much say that they're both predominantly strikers. Johnson is more of a guy that is more, I guess you could say he's more, he uses more aspects of his striking, right? So far, what we've seen of him in the UFC, and Josh Van, he's a boxer, right? He comes from a gym, 4 ounce in Houston. These guys are guys that are heavy-handed and they love to box. And you've seen that in Joshua Van's performances, man. He hasn't lost in the UFC yet. 22 years old. He's only 22 years
super
old.
young.
And Charles Johnson, man, he's 33. There's an 11-year age gap between these guys, right? Is that going to play a factor? Who knows, right? Johnson, he's the underdog.
He's known to have a gas tank, though.
Oh, for sure.
And he just beat Hadley.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, it's on short notice. Joshua Van has pretty much taken every fight on short notice and won. And Charles Johnson has taken a lot of risks, and sometimes it paid off and sometimes it hasn't, right? So, but Josh Van on the betting odds, he's the slight favorite, minus 190. And Johnson is 160, right? Yeah. Both guys, there's a decent height advantage for Johnson, 4 inches. The reach advantage is 5 inches, right? So that could play a factor, especially the way Johnson likes to kick.
Yeah.
More than Van does, right? Let's go into Van's recent record.
Well, we talked about Van recently, and then his fight against, what's his name? Tajir ended up getting scrapped.
Exactly, right? So like, it's crazy since debuting, right, in the UFC in 2023 of June. He beat Zumagulov, and then he beat Boras, and then he finished Bunes, right? And after that, dude, like, he's had some sick matchups. Like, he had Sumadarji set up.
Yeah.
And then that fell apart. He had Tatsuro Tiara
Yeah.
And then that fell apart, and he got switched up to and Ulanbekov, Tiara, Sumerdarji. These guys are like top 15 in the world.
Yeah.
And he was matched up with all of them. And then Ulanbekov, you saw what happened.
They all canceled.
Yeah, they all canceled. He missed weight when he never misses weight, which is weird.
Yeah.
Right. Tiara is not his fault. He got switched up and got booked with Alex Perez. Sumerdarji, he withdrew from the fight. And then even before that, Lucas Rocha got injured, right? And he had to withdraw. So, like Joshua Van, he fought in January, and then he had all these fights lined up throughout the year, and they all got somehow. And it's never his fault.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's never his fault. So it's like he's been in camp for so long, you know what I mean? Like camp after camp after camp. To point like now he's like, man, I just got to take any fight that's possible, right?
Yeah.
So Charles Johnson did go on social media before this fight was booked and was like campaigning for the fight, and he got it, man. And
nice.
I like Joshua Van. I like his style. He's a guy that is gonna become very popular, and he's gonna have a style where like he's gonna have success in this division, right? He's kind of like, in a way, like I don't know, he's like a more calmer version of Pantoja.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But like better hands. A lot of power, right, in his hands. I think if you're going to give a power advantage, you would give it to Joshua Van, just from his recent performances, just from his performances from the UFC. Not even talking about what he did in the regional scene, right? So what do you think of Joshua Van?
I mean, he was super active until he wasn't. So that's one thing. And for me, I think he has, because he's only lost one fight, and that was like quite a long time ago in comparison to the rest of his fights, right? So he's going to be coming in super confident. He has, he still has 2 submission wins as well. His only loss is a submission, but he's fighting a striker, or predominantly a striker. So I think for the most part, he's going to be coming in with a really good mindset, especially since most of his fights were short notice. I think it's going to be business as usual in his mind. And I think he might have, I wouldn't say a mental edge over Johnson, but Johnson has also taken a lot of short notice fights, but they haven't always gone his way. And I know Johnson predominantly wins via decision. And against somebody so heavy-handed that could be, because he also has lost predominantly to decision too. So, we'll see how it ends up playing out in the long run with that. I kind of give it to Van as well, though.
Both guys are very difficult to finish.
Yeah.
Like, both guys have good cardio. So let's look at Johnson on the flip side, right? So he debuted against Mohamed Makaev in 2022, July, and then came back and beat Zumagulov, and then beat Jimmy Flick.
Lost
finished
to
Jimmy,
Osborne.
finished Jimmy Flick in the first round. I think he took that on short notice as well, and then came back, took O'Day Osborne on short notice, lost that.
Yeah.
Very close fight. Cody Durden, he lost that one. Esteban lost that, and then with his job on the line, just knocks off back-to-back. Already just this year, he's not back. Azad Maxim, a guy that is very highly touted, goes in there on short notice, beats him,
and Hadley.
And then Hadley's another highly touted prospect, beats him. So Charles Johnson, he's on a very good run right now, back-to-back wins against in crazy, like the guys that he lost to are probably not as good as the guys that he beat. It just shows you the stylistic, and factors, right? Variables. 33 versus 22, you would think like, oh, I'm gonna go with the younger guy, but like Johnson, he's not. He doesn't look like he's slowing down any.
He's known for his cardio, right?
Exactly, he's known for his cardio, and I think, and the thing about Johnson is like he has the wrestling as well, but he doesn't really use it too much. It's almost like he uses the wrestling to keep it standing.
Yeah.
And Van, that's the type of fight he wants. He wants a guy that's not going to wrestle and want to keep it standing and go strike for strike. Van, I did an interview with him. He respects Johnson a lot. He respects what he's done. He respects the skill set, but he's very confident in himself.
Yeah.
And, you know, another factor that you got to put in there is elevation. Short notice weight cut. Weight cut in elevation. I wonder if that's something. A weight cut in elevation.
I'm sure it's not nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, a weight cut anywhere sucks. So a weight cut in elevation when you have to, you know, maybe not that I necessarily do it that way, but some guys, they like to put a sauna suit on and run, you know, like.
Yeah, I wonder if, because I always hear about people going to elevation that are not even athletes, and they have like issues of getting used to the elevation.
Yeah.
So if you're an athlete and then you have issues getting used to the elevation, and then on top of that you're doing a weight cut, that could go really wrong.
Oh, it could go horribly.
Yeah, horribly wrong. Right?
Weight cutting can go horribly even if you're in perfect conditions.
Exactly. I think, you know, I think these things are going to be a factor that we don't see as like spectators, but it's going to be something that impacts the fight.
Yeah.
And, man, Joshua Van is on a roll. So is Charles Johnson. These dudes are going to battle it out. These dudes are going to go toe to toe. They're going to be striking. You're going to see Van more of a heavy boxing style versus Charles Johnson that does like to kick, has the speed to maybe, you know, duck out the way of some of the looping shots. But I think Van is going to connect. I think Johnson, you know, it'd be one of those fights where Johnson is like, he's like maybe landing more, but Van is landing more of the significant strikes. And that could play out like that.
I see it being similar. Like, I think I can see Johnson landing more and then almost getting a little, I don't want to say too comfortable, but just staying in maybe some dangerous places just because he is landing with volume, and then Van could catch him with heavy shots.
Exactly, because once you get lazy, and that power doesn't really go away, right? And also, like, I want to see if this fight goes into the second and third round, like, who's fatiguing? Because we don't know who's going to, like, they're known for their cardio, but you never know, especially with the variables that are surrounding a fight and being in elevation, like, who is going to hit a wall.
Yeah.
Because once they hit the wall of, like, fatigue, will they be able to, like, overcome that? You know what I mean? Because when you're striking, it's different, right? Like, once you start fatiguing, your hands start getting lower and, like, all these things start to change. And the other guy is not fatigued, and he's still going the same patterns and rhythm as he was in the first round.
Yeah.
You know, it's a toss-up, man. This fight's a toss-up. And you know what? I feel like Johnson is in a position where he has to win this fight more than Van does. Because Van's only 22 years old, you know what I mean? Like, you know, the setbacks is just setbacks. You know, he could always come back and win.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to go with Joshua Van in this one. But Johnson is very capable of winning this fight with a very good game plan. And, yeah. And shit. You know, we've seen Johnson do some things that we thought he wasn't going to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And him beating Hadley, like, you know, he actually beat Hadley the exact way that we talked about how he would beat Hadley, you know. So, I think I still give it to Van, to be honest. I don't think Van will finish him. I actually think it'll be a decision win. That's what I see. I think he'll be harder than sort of expected, or maybe not expected, but like, you know, because Van does respect Johnson quite a bit, right? But I just think it'll end up being like a grind out and get to the end of the third.
And also, like, you don't know. Maybe Johnson will come out and say, like, okay, I'm going to wrestle. It's short notice. The dude doesn't really wrestle that much. I'm going to go and wrestle and try to take his back. You know, you never know, right? You expect these, like, stylistic type of fight to come out, but you just don't know. He might go in there and try to wrestle him, try to tire him out, and then the second round he comes out and starts to strike. Yeah. Maybe that's the game plan that he's going to put out. Maybe that's going to work. Who knows?
Yeah.
But if he go toe-to-toe with Van, I would pick Van.
Yeah.
Because Van loves that toe-to-toe shit, right?
That's his game.
That's his game. We'll see what happens.